The words came softly, almost as if he'd been holding them back for years. For the first time, Sam Heughan said, looking straight into the camera, "I'll tell you what she really means to me." It was a quiet confession, the kind that doesn't shout for attention but still manages to silence an entire room. Fans watching the interview replayed the clip over and over. Was he talking about her, Dakota Johnson? The actress whose name had been quietly linked to Sam's for months? For years, Sam had been the mystery man of Hollywood, charming, private, and impossible to pin down. He had been connected to co-stars, friends, models, but never truly opened his heart in public. Until now, something about this moment felt different. There was no rehearsed smile, no evasive humor. Just honesty. It all began months earlier, far from the flashing lights of Los Angeles, during a small film collaboration event in London. Sam had been invited to speak about independent cinema. Dakota was there to promote her latest project. Their first meeting wasn't dramatic. No paparazzi, no headlines. Just two artists talking about storytelling, about life, about what fame had cost them. She was calm, Sam recalled later. Not the kind of calm that comes from silence, but the kind that makes you feel safe. From that first conversation, something unspoken began. They exchanged messages occasionally, shared articles, and offered advice on scripts. What started as a simple professional connection slowly grew into something deeper, something neither of them dared to define. Friends noticed the change in Sam almost immediately. He was lighter, more at ease. The man who once spent holidays alone in Scotland was now seen laughing during casual dinners, taking late-night walks, and, for the first time, allowing himself to be seen outside the protective armor he'd worn for so long. Dakota, too, seemed to glow differently. Known for her playful sarcasm and sharp wit, she spoke of someone who makes me laugh in the quietest way. When asked about her ideal partner, she simply said, someone honest. Someone who knows how to be kind when the world isn't. Fans began to piece the puzzle together, though neither confirmed a thing. Behind closed doors, their relationship unfolded with the gentle pace of people who had both been hurt before. There were no grand gestures, no extravagant dates. Instead, there were long conversations over tea, shared moments of silence, and nights spent listening to old records. Sam would read her lines from his favorite Scottish poems. She'd tease him for being too sentimental. But she loved it. He doesn't need to perform, Dakota told a friend once. He's just real. You don't meet people like that in this business anymore. For Sam, Dakota represented everything he'd been missing. Warmth without chaos, affection without pressure. She didn't ask about the rumors, the fans, or the past. She simply listened, and in her presence, he found a kind of peace he hadn't felt in years. When the interviewer asked him what made her special, Sam hesitated, his eyes softening. She's different, he said quietly. She listens. She sees beyond all of this, the fame, the noise, the expectations. With her, I don't feel like I have to be someone else. The interviewer smiled, clearly aware of the subtext. You sound like a man in love. Sam's response was just a gentle laugh, but his silence after said everything. As clips of the interview spread across social media, fans were torn between shock and admiration. Some called it brave, others called it reckless. But for the first time, Sam didn't seem to care what the world thought. His confession wasn't meant for headlines, it was meant for her. What few people knew was that behind that heartfelt admission lay something deeper. Something he hadn't shared yet, a truth he was still learning to face. Because love, for Sam Heughan, wasn't just about finding someone new. It was about rediscovering himself after years of pretending that he didn't still believe in love at all. And as his quiet confession echoed across millions of screens, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a story about Sam and Dakota. It was about healing. About two people who, after so much noise, finally found their way back to something simple, something real. But there was still more to the story. Because hidden beneath that honesty, there was something Sam had never told anyone. A truth that revealed why his words carried so much weight, The second half of his confession came weeks later, during a live appearance in Edinburgh. Sam had been asked to speak about love, not the romantic kind from scripts, but the kind that survives distance, silence, and fear. He paused for a moment, the room quiet, then smiled that familiar soft smile. Love, he said, isn't about the perfect story. It's about courage, the courage to be seen, even when you're afraid. It wasn't until afterward, in a smaller backstage interview, that he finally revealed what everyone had been waiting for. Yes, he said simply, I was speaking about Dakota. There was no dramatic build-up, no headline-worthy gesture, just truth. He described her as someone who reminds me that peace isn't boring, it's rare. He admitted that for a long time, he had forgotten what it meant to truly connect with someone outside of the characters he played. I'd spent so many years acting like I had everything under control, he confessed. But she made me realize that it's okay not to have all the answers. To many, it felt like a turning point, the first time Sam had ever spoken openly about love without hiding behind mystery or metaphors. To him, it was something deeper, an acceptance of vulnerability. For years, he had built walls around his heart, protecting it from loss, from gossip, from the relentless expectations that came with fame. Dakota, somehow, had found her way through those walls, not by force but by presence. Friends later described their relationship as quietly steady. They weren't chasing attention or flaunting luxury, instead, they shared moments that didn't need an audience. A walk through the rain in Glasgow. A late-night phone call across time zones. A morning spent cooking breakfast and laughing over burned toast. When asked what drew him most to Dakota, Sam's answer was simple. She doesn't demand to be understood, she just understands. That one sentence spread across social media like wildfire. Fans reposted it, quoting it as a love lesson, while headlines praised Sam for his honesty. For the first time in years, he wasn't being defined by who people thought he loved, but by how he chose to love. Yet, underneath all the celebration, there was a tenderness to his words, as if part of him still carried the ghosts of past heartbreak. He spoke of how love can't erase what came before, it can only give it meaning. Every person we've cared for leaves a mark, he said. It doesn't disappear when something new begins. It becomes part of who we are. That quiet maturity, that understanding that love doesn't replace but transforms, was what made his confession feel different. It wasn't a declaration of victory, it was an acknowledgement of growth. Dakota, too, responded in her own gentle way. When a journalist asked her about Sam's statement, she smiled. He has a beautiful soul, she said. Sometimes people meet at the exact moment they're both ready to be honest. Their honesty became a kind of mirror for others, a reminder that vulnerability isn't weakness. Behind the polished image of celebrities were two people who had finally allowed themselves to stop pretending, to speak without fear of being misinterpreted. One evening, during a small charity dinner, someone overheard Sam reading a short note he'd written for Dakota. It wasn't meant for the public, but a few words leaked out later. Thank you for teaching me that love doesn't have to be loud to be real. That single line summed up everything he had been trying to say. That love, at its truest, isn't found in grand gestures or magazine covers, but in quiet moments of understanding between two people who have both been broken and rebuilt. The confession wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of one told without fear. Sam didn't need to hide behind mystery anymore. He had found someone who saw him, the man behind the fame, and he had the courage to say it aloud. When the interview aired in full, fans across the world reacted not with gossip, but with warmth. For once, the narrative wasn't about scandal or speculation, it was about truth. And as Sam closed that segment with a soft laugh and said, "I'm just grateful. That's all," there was a collective sense of peace. Because after all the years of silence, the rumors, the heartbreaks and near misses, Sam Heughan had finally done the bravest thing a man can do. He'd told the world what his heart already knew.